Hey guys, so we are going to try this again. I'm going to make a Benson doll from Toy Story 4 using just this picture. I found this online and I made multiple copies of it so that I could make a pattern. If you remember, I tried this in my last video. I tried making Gabby Gabby, also from Toy Story 4, and I wasn't exactly pleased with the results. Her head turned out to be a triangle instead of a round shape, and I wanted to make this one a lot better. I learned a lot trying to make my Gabby Gabby doll, so I'm pretty sure I can do this. And this time I'm going to do it completely differently so that I get a better result. And it also occurred to me that Benson looks a lot like Slappy from Goosebumps. This could also be a Slappy dummy. So let's get started. First, I'm going to cut out all my pieces. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make this doll when I started cutting it out, so I just went around cutting out pieces that I actually didn't end up using. In the beginning, I thought I was just going to make a 2D version of the doll and then add a back and add stuffing so that it kind of looked three-dimensional. But that's not what I ended up doing. I ended up making a full doll, like movable arms and legs and everything. So I cut out way more pieces than I needed, and some of them I didn't even use. And so here are all the pieces in their glory, ready to be made into a Benson or Slappy doll. First, I outlined the head and I gave myself a seam allowance. I cut that out. And then I cut out another piece exactly like it. It was at this point that I realized this project was going to be far too complicated and it just wasn't going to look right unless I made this a full-on doll. And so I started cutting out the arms, the legs, and the torso to make a Benson doll. Here are all the pieces cut out. And if you look here, this is one of my doll patterns that I made to actually make a cloth doll, and it's very similar to the one I just cut out. So here's hoping this works. So I set out outlining and giving a seam allowance to the arms, legs, and torso. I cut all the pieces out and set them aside because now I knew which direction I was going in. Yay, me! Now let's make the face. I cut out the whites of his eyes and his black pupils. I placed the printout of the head onto my face piece and kind of felt around where the eye should be. Once I got it in place, I sewed it on. Then I did the same thing for the other one. I sewed on the pupils. Then I decided to make the black outline around his eyes. At first I used embroidery thread and sewed on the black outline. But I didn't like how that turned out, so I took out the stitches and went in another direction. I ended up cutting out pieces to go around his eyes and sewing them in place. However, I did decide to use embroidery thread to make his blue eyelids. Not bad, looking good. Time to add the eyebrows. And with the eyebrows on, now we're going to add the back piece. I put these two pieces right sides together. Once it was sewed along the edges, I turned the piece right side out. I filled the head with polyfill stuffing and I sewed the bottom of the head. Looking good. We have a round head this time, guys. I placed my pattern piece on top of the doll and tried to figure out where the mouth should be. Then I sewed it on using red embroidery thread. I used black thread for the puppet lines under his mouth, and then the face of our Benson doll was complete. So I moved on to the body, arms, and legs. I sewed them all together and then turned them inside out and stuffed them with stuffing. I left an opening at the bottom of the body and inserted the legs. Then I sewed them in place. I used a wide basting stitch at first, and then I went back and sewed them properly in place. When I stuffed the arms, I made sure to close up the opening so the arms were completely self-contained. I added more stuffing to the body and decided where the arms should be placed. This is where my handy-dandy doll needle comes into play. This is an extra long sewing needle. It's just like the little ones you use, but this one is really long. It's a special needle used for different things like attaching dolls' arms, and that's what we're going to use it for today. So with this needle, I could really decide the arm placement and how it should fit onto the body. Once I got all the pieces on, I went back and forth a few times so that the arms were really attached. Okay, back to the head. Now we need to attach the hair. I decided I wasn't happy with the hair piece I cut out because I was going in a completely different direction than when I started the video, so I cut out a new hair piece. I also cut out a larger hair piece that would go on the back of the head of the doll. Like this. Because I'm completely winging it here and I'm really not sure how this is going to come together, I decided to sew the top of the hair piece and then proceed from there. I placed it on the doll where I thought his hairline was, and then I sewed it in place. I stuffed the back piece with stuffing, and then positioned the head and sewed the back of the neck onto the back of the head of the doll. This is going to be completely covered and not seen because the hair is going to be sewn over it. Obviously, there was a flaw in my plan. His head is a little floppy. That's not what we want. So I went in and sewed the front of the head onto the neck piece. And that seemed to fix it. I continued sewing and stuffing the hair until it was completely in place. And at last we have our Benson doll, but now he needs clothes. I used the doll to outline the shape of the pants, and I'm using just plain blue felt because I didn't have any striped felt on hand, and I thought it was close enough. As an added bonus, it also doubles as looking a lot like Slappy the Dummy's suit. So I outlined a leg of the pants and then cut them completely bigger than they should be because I really didn't want to make them too small. I thought if I make them too big, I can always make them smaller, but too small means that I have to go back and cut out everything all over again. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened the first time I tried to make a pattern for the pants. And if I had two of them, they weren't going to be able to be sewn together. So I went back and made them much, much larger. They were so large for the doll, they looked kind of like clown pants. But I knew that I could make them fit in one way or another. So now I'm off to the sewing machine. And as you can see here, I did some sizing while at the sewing machine. I sewed them so that they kind of fit a little better. I cut off the edges. I turned them right side out. And place them on the doll, and they fit, well, they fit okay. And let's just say they fit okay. I can work with it. I cut the bottom of the pants because they were too long. And I cut the top of the pants because they were also too high. They were definitely too big in the waist, but instead of going back to the drawing board, I sewed a pleat in the front and 2 pleats in the back. It was going to be covered by the suit anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Next, I outlined the arm and part of the doll to make the suit. First, I cut out the suit to be pretty much exactly the size of the doll. And I used that to make a larger suit with seam allowances. When I cut out the larger piece, I wanted to make sure to leave enough room in the front that I could fold over the fabric and it would still cover the doll. This will make a lapel in the front of the suit, which is kind of the big collar thing that you see on suit jackets. It's actually called a lapel fold. Anyway, that's what I was trying to do. And it looked huge on the doll, but that's exactly what we wanted. So I cut it down the middle. This is going to be the front after all. Then I cut out a smaller piece for the back. Then I went to the sewing machine and sewed the front pieces to the back. And as you can see, I decided to make it a lot different than I originally cut out. I turned the suit inside out and put it on my doll. And that's when I learned the suit needed to be altered. There was too much room at the top and not enough at the bottom for the arms. So I went back to the sewing machine again and made the armhole a little bit smaller. When you don't have a pattern, you make lots of mistakes and you keep fixing it until it's right, or somewhere close to right. I recut out the notches and then put the suit on the doll again. This time was a lot better. I cut the sleeves down to size. And then I started making the shirt. For this, I used a square of white felt. I cut a long rectangle piece of felt, placed it around the doll's neck, and used that as a collar. There was lots of cutting and measuring and la, but you get the gist of it. I sewed the shirt in place. I don't ever intend on taking the clothes off of this doll, so the shirt was just sewn onto the doll. Next, I cut the lapel fold down to size. Then I tied a long piece of red felt into a knot and made it his bow tie. I cut the suit down to size because it was a little long. Then I moved on to the shoes. This time I just kind of eyeballed it and cut out the shape of his foot. I sewed them together, turned them right side out, and put them on the doll's feet. And that's it! We went from picture to doll. I think this one is a lot better than my Gabby Gabby doll, which ended up with a triangle head. But this is not even close to how perfect I want it to be. So we will try this again and try to perfect our doll making skills.